A sitting congresswoman is under scrutiny for her trip to Syria, where she met with refugees, government opposition leaders, and Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. Tulsi Gabbard of Hawaii is calling on the United States to stop what she calls the regime change war in Syria. RTC Mondel Rosario has more on her trip and how some of her colleagues are reacting.
Fresh off her trip to Syria, Hawaii Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard is renewing calls to end U.S. efforts of regime change in the war-torn country. She says during the visit, I was asked, why is the United States and its allies helping al-Qaeda and other terrorist groups try to take over Syria? Syria did not attack the United States, al-Qaeda did. She says, I had no answer. Gabbard has long been against regime change, and before her trip in mid-January, she took to the House floor to urge her fellow lawmakers to support the Stop Arming Terrorists Act, legislation she introduced in December.
The fact that our resources are being used to strengthen the very terrorist groups we should be focused on defeating should alarm every American. I urge my colleagues to support this bipartisan legislation and stop this madness.
The act would prohibit the U.S. government from providing funding, weapons, training, or intelligence to any known terrorist groups and allies, or to countries providing direct or indirect support of those same groups. Her comments on U.S. actions in Syria have outraged some in Washington, but her decision to meet with Syrian President Bashar al-Assad during her visit is even more contentious. Ken Good from Center for American Progress tweets, it's utterly disgraceful that Tulsi Gabbard meets with Syrian government during war in which it continues to slaughter civilians. Illinois Congressman Adam Kinzinger says, by meeting with Assad, Tulsi Gabbard has legitimized his dictatorship and his genocide. It is beyond reprehensible. And Washington Post columnist Josh Rogan says Tulsi Gabbard says the Syrians she spoke to all support Assad. Maybe because her trip was arranged by the regime? Rogan's statement is unfounded. Gabbard's office said the trip was led and sponsored by the Arab American Community Center for Economic and Social Services in Ohio. It's an American-based nonprofit aimed at Arab American human services. Regardless of fact, Rogan's statement has been retweeted more than 600 times, including by at least one congressional member. The Syrian civil war has gone on for nearly 6 years. More than 500,000 people have died and millions have fled the country, contributing to the largest refugee crisis in recent history. In Washington, Simone Del Rosario, RT.
And for more on this, we're joined tonight by Jim Jatras, former U.S. diplomat and GOP foreign policy analyst. Jim, nice to have you with us tonight. First of all, how important do you think it is to get a congressional voice, boots on the ground? And of course, Rogan from the Washington Post is some kind of gutter reporter for not checking his facts as to who organized the trip and how it was put together. It just underscores how unprofessional he is as a reporter to pull a stunt like that on a member of Congress, I might add. So your thoughts on how important this trip was in telling the truth from the Syrian perspective?
Ed, I think it's huge, and I think that explains a lot of the nastiness that's going on here. Let's remember, Tulsi Gabbard is not just any member of Congress. She's a very progressive Democrat, but on the other hand, and a freshman and a veteran, but on the other hand, she was also one of the first people that Donald Trump called up to talk to about foreign policy after he got elected, and I do hope he will call her back to hear firsthand about her experiences there. I mean, she knew when she went that she would be trashed by these people who, let's be honest, have been supporting and cheerleading for these terrorist groups that she wants to stop arming with her bill. I mean, to think that here we are 15 years after 9/11, and it's controversial somehow to stop sending weapons to people like al-Qaeda. It just shows how messed up the policy is that she is criticizing.
How should the United States get to the bottom of human rights issues in Syria, or if that's even possible?
You know, on one level, it is impossible that when you have a war like this, a lot of nasty things are going to go on both sides. There's no nice way to fight a war like that. But I give the benefit of the doubt much more to the government because I know so many Syrians myself who are from all different communities in Syria and are strong defenders of the government versus people we know are jihadists. They come with a Salafist ideology. You know, we know what ISIS does, burning people alive, taking sex slaves, that there is a moral difference between the two sides. What's amazing is that the establishment is on the side of the terrorists. And that's what Tulsi Gabbard is criticizing.
And I want to go back in a report we had earlier tonight by Manila Chan about the number of people that are leaving the State Department. Your thoughts on that? Is this a little out of the normal, or is this just the attrition that takes place in transition?
It's the attrition that takes place during transition, but you don't expect it to happen all at once, or for that matter, the media to make a big deal out of it. You do expect political appointees to depart as the replacements are named and the new administration, and maybe these people were trying to make some kind of a point. All I can say is looking at those names, and I have to say honestly, particularly Victoria Nuland, please, you cannot leave soon enough. I am just so thrilled to see these people gone. I do have some concern about some of the names that have been floated in the Washington Post about possible replacements. I think it's something that Trump needs to look out for.
Okay. Jim Jatras, thank you. Thanks for joining us tonight.